Hello again, Year 10. I'm having to do this on a separate video. I've still not got the hang of how to go back and add to the previous video. So just the structure section to finish now. So it should be a relatively short video. Structure is always the area that students find the hardest to answer on. I'll do my best to make it clear-ish. Firstly, Ozymandias was written partly as a challenge to Shelley from another poet. They set each other a challenge to write a sonnet. Now, a sonnet is a poem that has 14 lines, and normally it follows some kind of rhyme pattern. Classically, there are two types of sonnets: Petrarchan, named after the Italian poet Petrarch, and Shakespearean. Now, this poem, Ozymandias, kind of follows the Petrarchan sonnet, but as I'll explain later, it goes into a structure of its own. So, Shelley has followed the structure of a Petrarchan sonnet, and then from that. The thing to say about the Petrarchan sonnet and Shakespearean sonnet is they were just rules for how you wrote certain types of poems. So, written in Shelley's age, it was traditional to follow certain rules for certain types of poems, and those rules would say how many lines, how many verses, what kind of rhymes should be in the poem, basically the structure of the poem. So Shelley was, to a certain extent, following the rules of a sonnet. Now, the first rule is that the poem is split into an octave and a sestet. So that the octave is the first 8 lines: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And traditionally, the octave, the first 8 lines, would start off by describing a story or a problem. And then the bottom 8 lines, the sestet, the bottom 6 lines, sorry, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is the cut-off point here. This is when it changes from an octave to a sestet. The bottom 6 lines would then resolve the problem or resolve the story. So if you like, the first 8 lines are the description of the traveller, what he finds in the desert, and the bottom 6 lines then tell us kind of what the problem is. Well, the statue is now ruined and in the desert, so really the statue failed to have the effect that Ozymandias wanted. The rhyme scheme, normally in a sonnet, the rhyme scheme would be followed throughout the poem. So what we have here is, if you see down here, I've written down the rhyme scheme for all 14 lines. So you start off with the first line, which is line A, and that ends with the word land. And as you can see on the third line, land rhymes with sand. So that's why we have the first line is A, the second line is B, and the third line is A, and that's just because on the third line, sand rhymes with land on the first line. Then on the second line, we have a word that doesn't rhyme with land, stone, but it does rhyme with frown. Now, I know what you're thinking, no, it doesn't. But the way it was pronounced in Shelley's age was different, and they would have rhymed. So you've got 2 pairs of rhymes here. So if you just change the numbers to letter, on line A, there's it gone, on line A we have the word land, and then that also rhymes with sand. So they're both A rhymes, and then on line 2 we have stone, which definitely rhymes with frown, so those are the B lines, they rhyme with each other. And then we think we're going to follow the same structure. We have on the next line command, which rhymes with sand and land. So if we were following that structure, we would now have something that rhymes with stone, but we don't. Cursor again. We have the word red. So from this point onwards, Shelley is moving away from the rhyme scheme of a sonnet. And as you can see from here on in, the rhyme scheme is a bit all over the place. So fed rhymes with red, and then new rhymes appear. If you look at the letter E and D, that's where new rhymes appear. So what you need to know is that the first 4 lines of the poem follow the rhyme scheme of a sonnet. So Shelley is saying here that I can follow the rules of a sonnet, but then he breaks off into an irregular rhyme scheme, a rhyme pattern. So he's at the start he's saying I can follow this rhyme scheme, and then he says I'm not going to. So what's that got to do with the poem? Well, just like the statue in the desert, at the start of the poem, Shelley is saying this is the structure I have created, and then in the rest of the poem he's saying that structure is an illusion. It's just something I created, and now I'm going to create something free. So this links to two ways to the poem. Just like the statue of Ozymandias, it's an illusion. Just like the rhyme scheme in the sonnet is an illusion. You don't have to follow it, and the statue had an illusion of power. And secondly, just like the Romantics believed in the freedom of nature, Shelley is, and then from the 5th line onwards, is saying, well, I can follow the rhyme scheme that best suits what I want to say about the statue and about human power. So he is completely free to follow the rhyme scheme that he wants, and that reflects his views that nature, the desert, also is free and has more power than humans. So freedom. And finally, if you note, finally, the meter of the poem. So the meter is the number of syllables on each line, and which syllables are stressed or emphasized when they are read out. So if we have a look at the first line here, count with me all together. I met a traveller from an antique land. 10 syllables. Where's the camera? 10 syllables. Here we go again. Who said to vast and trunkless legs of stone. So 10 syllables, and that's the case for every line, and that's called a pentameter. But again, Shelley only partly follows the rules. Normally in a sonnet, every second syllable would be emphasized. And what I mean by emphasized, think when you say the word traveller, which syllables are emphasized? Trav-la or tra-la? It's the first bit. The tr syllable is the one emphasized. So normally a sonnet poem would deliberately be written so that you have to emphasize the second syllable, but here Shelley doesn't do that. The emphasis is not on a specific syllable. So why is this relevant to the poem? It's the same thing. There's a bit of order, a bit of structure, because there are 10 syllables on every line, but then Shelley feels free to do whatever he wants. He breaks free from that structure. It's the same theme again with the statue, that Ozymandias is attempting to put order and structure into the desert, order and structure into nature by putting the statue in the desert, but eventually nature has to break free, and Shelley is breaking free from the rules of the sonnet. He has 10 lines on every 10 syllables on every line, but he doesn't then follow the rest of the structure that each syllable should be emphasized. So, a couple of questions there, please, if you could jot these down. So, how many lines are in a sonnet? How many lines are normally in a sonnet? And now I think this is the 7th question. There are lots of rules to a sonnet. Normally a sonnet has a regular rhyme scheme. As you can see here, from the example of the rhyme scheme, the poem doesn't follow a regular rhyme scheme apart from the first four lines. So why does Shelley do this? Why does Shelley start off by following a rhyme scheme and then completely break free from it? Why do you think that is? Okay, that's it for the revision of Ozymandias. The last piece of work I would like you to do, and I will send you a quiz on this. If you have a look at the underlined quotes, I would like you to try and remember these. This is an unseen exam, so you wouldn't necessarily have the poem in front of you if you choose to compare this poem. So the first quote I'd like you to learn, please. Where's the cursor gone again? Whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command. Number 1. Number 2. My name is Ozymandias, king of kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. That's number 2. Number 3, a short one. Nothing beside remains. And number 4, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. That's the fourth quote. So if you could do prep on those quotes, and I will send you a quiz later on in the week to see if you managed to remember them. That's all for now. Have a nice week, and hopefully see you soon. Bye.